Can you hear me? This is we've been saying this for the past hour, trying to get the technology set up. Welcome to the afternoon session of data management planning, and Dave is going to do a little more fidgeting here. Okay, so we are going to take you through some of the data management planning things that we've been working on with DataONE and the California Digital Library, University of Virginia. And so first, Andrew is going to introduce some just basic concepts of the data management planning tool, and then I'm going to give everybody kind of a demo of the new version of the data management planning tool. So take it away, Andrew.
Okay, so thank you everyone for attending. We lost a lot of people here, but hopefully the smaller group will allow us to have a bit more discussion and conversation about this throughout the process. So I think as we go through each part, we can probably stop and have some conversation questions if people have some. So the part that I'm starting with is kind of an overview of how we were approaching the DMP tool, some of the problems that we're trying to address and some of the reasons for it. So they may not necessarily be new issues to you, but they're important in sort of context and understanding why we approached the way we did. So firstly, some ideas about why people ought to be caring about data management planning. We see many of the ones that are listed up here as critical points. So reproducibility, of course, a major one. Transparency and accountability. Some people see it as a competitive edge. So if they do a better job managing and planning how they're going to manage their data, they may be more competitive in getting grants versus other people. There's also a potential opportunity for getting more credit by making data citable, increasing impact, purely getting more value out of the work that's being done. There's a practical aspect in being efficient, avoiding data loss. These are things that probably everybody's concerned about, even if they don't care about requirements. So it's something we're trying to appeal to. We also have approached this in trying to acknowledge that data management planning is complex and requires lots of attention to different details and parts of the problem. What we mean by this is that this is an infrastructure problem, it's a policy problem, it's about standards and practices, and has people with expertise in lots of different areas that sort of need to be drawn in to figure out how to address these problems. And then the last one is another purely practical one. If you want funding, you may have to do this, and you have to figure out what you need to do in order to get that funding. So we were approaching the DMP tool within the context of these types of questions. At the same time, not everybody really wants to do this. There's a common, I think, attitude here that people might be possessive or not really interested in sharing their research, or it's a proprietary thing, it's a personal thing. You don't want everybody else to have it, and this obviously goes against that. So we're aware of that as we're approaching this. So a lot of the design aspects you see are going to be trying to appeal to these types of interests, trying to help people sort of deal with that and ease through it. So some so-called recent news. This is recent news from a while ago, and that's the White House Office of Science Technology Policy came out with a memorandum in February of 2013. This memorandum basically said that all agencies over $100 million annual budgets were going to be required to make the results, the papers, and the data publicly available with 1 year of publication. So that was the statement. A little while later, we're still figuring out how to deal with that. But this basically is a major statement indicating that researchers need to be better to account for and manage their data. And it's not just about the publications. So again, a reason that the DMP tool has done what it's done. So in looking at some of the components of what you'll see in the DMP tool, I'm going to talk about it through the context of one of the main requirement areas, the National Science Foundation. And the NSF came out with their requirements in January of 2011. And they're broken down in sort of a variety of different areas. These are some links that you could take a look at later. They're coming through data sharing policies, through data management plan requirement. And then the general way that it broke down is that each agency and directorate and division, and sometimes even programs, were able to specify their own requirements. So there's a lot of sort of nuance that comes with this, which makes it more complicated and more difficult to deal with, which is what we've been aiming to sort of address with the DMP tool. It's not just the NSF, it's lots of other agencies. Of course, with the federal, with the OSDP memorandum, it's many, many agencies. But even before that memorandum, some of the agencies listed here already started to have some of their own data management planning requirements. And in every one of these cases, the implementation is a little bit different. It's a little different to address needs within those particular disciplines and particular pressures and realities of what data looks like there. So a thing that we always have tried to stress is that sufficient time has to be put into figuring out what these requirements are and how to appropriately address them and putting a plan together. So if a researcher is proposing to multiple different agencies for a particular project, you can see how this might get very complicated very fast. So this is some of the background. So getting into what a data management plan within this context entails. Overall, it's a plan about how you'll manage research data across the entire life cycle of the research, and a description of how you'll comply with a particular policy. In the cases that we're talking about, it's reviewed as part of the grant application. So this may vary in actual implementation, but somebody is looking at it to see whether it meets a certain set of requirements and whether it's approved. Also, in the area of dissemination sharing, this is a statement directly out of the NSF's guide, and I'll read it. It says, investigators are expected to share with other researchers at no more than incremental cost and within a reasonable time the primary data, samples, physical collections, and other supporting materials created or gathered in the course of work under NSF grants. Grantees are expected to encourage and facilitate such sharing. So some of the themes that come up here, incremental cost, reasonable time, primary data, it even includes physical collections, supporting materials. So it's pretty broad and inclusive, and it includes some things that haven't necessarily been done in a broad way before. So this is the sort of background and theme of what's happening here and what we're trying to work on. So the plan in accordance with the NSF mandate as of January 2011 was a specific implementation plan. And in this case, it was no more than 2 pages, labeled a data management plan as a supplement, and it's supposed to talk about how to conform to the policy on dissemination and sharing. So the things that I'll sort of talk about after this are the components that go into that. Before we get there, when you go through this process of trying to figure out, looking at top-level requirements, looking at the specific requirements of a program or a call, then it gets into the complications of which one do you follow, and sort of all the tiers that go with this. So the way that we think about this is first look at the requirements from the specific solicitation, then look at the guidelines from the directorate division. Sometimes they don't have them at the program level, sometimes they don't have them at the directorate division level, so then sometimes you have to go up to the 3rd level of looking at the more general guidelines. Then on the interdisciplinary side, crossover proposals, sometimes you have to look at the lead program, sometimes you actually have to just contact program officers and figure out what's going on there. But this is some of the ambiguity that's involved in this area. So the specific parts that go into one of these NSF plans, and in this particular case, I'm talking about it as a generic NSF plan, which is top-level requirements, not specialized for division or directorate. It's these 5 areas. It's products of research, data formats, access to data, data sharing practices, policies, policies for reuse, redistribution, derivatives, and the archiving of data. So these are things that those of us in the room here right now may be familiar with and may be able to put a data management plan together rather quickly, but things which a researcher who hasn't had to do this before may not figure out how to address very easily or very quickly. And yet they may have to do it within a very short time frame right before a proposal is submitted. So this is some of the challenge. So in the first section, the types of data, the things that are being asked about are questions like this. What type of data is going to be generated? What types will be created or captured? How, when, and where will this capture happen? How will it be processed? And if you're using this existing data, where did you get it from? You know, if it's secondary analysis, that kind of thing. And what's the relationship between what's being collected and what already existed? So these are questions that may seem kind of obvious, but can be stumbling blocks nonetheless. So a second area here is the data and metadata standards. I think a question that many people who work with researchers on this may encounter often is sort of lack of common awareness about what metadata is in the first place. I mean, I think here in the room we might even debate what metadata is sometimes, or at least what it is specifically. So some questions here are about which file formats, what sort of metadata is going to be used in describing documenting, how the creation and capture is happening, so metadata describing that aspect of it, what sort of standards are being used or selected, and then the contextual details to figure out how to actually use this metadata to understand and reproduce the results that are being shared. All of these being really critical aspects, but ones which researchers haven't necessarily been required to share in a very broad way before. A third area is the policies area, or one of the policies areas. So in here we get into how, when is it going to be available, a lot of timing issues. What's the process for gaining access? So where is it going to go? How would you get access to it in that way? Whether there are rights to actually use this. So this assumes that researchers understand the rights involved in the research and the data that they're using, whether they have rights to it, whether their institution does, whether the funder does. There's lots of different aspects to that. And then whether there are embargo periods, whether there are commercial interests in this, how you deal with these sort of balances. Another area, or sort of continuation of that one, gets into issues that may be extremely important in certain fields and less so in others. Ethical privacy issues, so whether this research data can be shared or whether it can't be shared. Whether there are obligations or governance around it in terms of like IRB protocols. And then, of course, the intellectual property right issue again, and whether that has an influence upon access or not. The fourth area, the policies, provisions, reuse, and redistribution. So the questions here include, will permission restrictions need to be placed on the data? So if the data can be shared, can it only be shared to certain people or under certain circumstances? And how does that all get managed? Some sort of curatorial interest about who might want to use this data, how might they want to use it. It's sort of a speculatory question. And the same thing goes for the last question there, the intended uses. And then the fifth is the plans for archiving and preservation. So this assumes that people are aware of repositories and places to archive and preserve data and the appropriate ways in which to do that. So some questions here are what data is going to be preserved for the long term, which means that some data might not be, but a specification of what that is. What's the long-term strategy for maintaining, curating, archiving? what sort of a place has been identified to put this data, what sort of procedures have been put in place for the preservation and backup, meaning like attention to this across the entire research process, and how long will or should this data be kept beyond the life of the entire project, meaning does it end after 5 or 10 years, or should it be kept forever because it can never be recollected or regenerated? And a continuation, a little bit more here. And clearly there are many questions beyond what I'm listing that could be included in all of these areas. But these are some of the highlight ones. What transformations could be necessary to prepare the preservation for data sharing? What sort of metadata and documentation will be submitted, and what related information will be deposited. So again, things that are necessary to understand what the data is, how the data is, who can use it, etc. So again, back to the specifics of the NSF and that implementation. It's a 2-page plan. It is supposed to be, at least, reviewed for merit and or impact with the proposal. So it's part of the full peer review process. And it should address these 5 points, the ones I just talked about. So this is sort of the guidance that we would give people, and that gets sort of built into the DMP tool. So here's an update. So what I was alluding to before with the recent news is, as of March, there was a new announcement from the White House Office of Science Technology Policy, which indicated that all of the required agencies had submitted plans. Office of Management and Budget and OSTP had reviewed and commented on these plans. The agencies at this point were working to identify infrastructure solutions to support the plans. So on the agency side, they're trying to figure out, now that we have this requirement, or that we will have this requirement, how can we actually make it easy for people to adhere to it? And then there would be continued meetings and conversations in coming months to figure out how to deal with these solutions and strategies. So this is a link to the specific press release about this. So at this point, that's sort of the broad, high-level context that goes into the DMP tool, at least as sort of the problem statement. I think at this point we could open for questions, comments. The next thing that's going to come up is Tricia is going to do an actual demonstration of the DMP tool, showing you what it looks like, what some of the new features in the new version are. But before we get to that, if you have questions, comments, if you want to make observations about what you've experienced, or if these were all the wrong challenges, you know, those are the things we'd like to hear, and there will be more room for conversation later. So does anybody have anything to say right now? Yeah.
Question. I apologize if I missed it at the beginning. I'm curious, I know you have the ability to make sort of DMP profiles for different universities. Can you comment on what have people been doing? How much are they customizing? Are people putting in more questions, or are they actually trying to answer the questions for the researchers? But what's the process of those things?
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense. Do we want to answer that now, or do you want to?
Yeah, I can go into that when we talk about DMPTool. Or you can go ahead and.
Sure. So yes, so it is possible to customize for an institution. I don't know the current number. Over 100 have done customization at this point. Is that right? Okay. So about 130 institutions have provided customized guidance. The purpose of that, which was not part of the first version of DMPTool, is to address the intersection point between the requirements I was just talking about and local requirements. So institutions have their own issues that they have to deal with. They have policies around use of infrastructure, and may have mandates around where data needs to be stored, who's liable, what records management policies might look like, who's allowed to access, who's not allowed to access, what services you're allowed to use or not use, things like these. And we recognize that that was a major issue for researchers. They kind of get stuck in the middle. They've got to come up with a plan. The government says this, their institution says this, and they don't have any idea how to sort of deal with reconciling. So we tried to provide a space where people at an institution could provide localized guidance, as we call it, towards that. So you'll see that when Tricia talks.
Have you seen people kind of giving answers? At University X, we are storing things in our institution repository, and therefore your plan can be that this is the answer as opposed to here are some additional requirements and questions at our university.
Yeah. Right, so it's both. It'll be like links to these other policies at the institution. It'll be in this section, the institutional policy says this, so put this. You know, this institution may say you have to deposit in your institutional repository. That's the way that the institution is responding. So it's a cut and paste in that case, maybe. Yeah. Other questions right now or observations?
I just wanted to comment on the questions that Andrew went over in the five sections. What NSF gave the researchers was just the 5 section headings. And so what we did with the DMP tool is we actually used the data management plan checklist from the DCC because they had their data management plan online. And we took some of their questions that they had in their checklist and we applied it to the different sections of the NSF requirement. And that's sort of how we've been doing mapping the other funder requirements as we get them, using the same questions so that if you have NSF, now you have USGS, the questions are going to be similar inside. So that's where those questions that Andrew read off came from a bigger, giant, long checklist that we picked and chose which ones we wanted, we thought were most important in answering or filling in the questions to support the sections.
Anything else? What's everybody else's experience been? Or what have experiences been with DMPTool 1? Has anybody used DMPTool 1? Okay. Okay. So Spencer. Shouldn't have raised your hand.
That was great. We have actually a nice workflow worked out with our Office of Research that whenever the PI says they're going to submit for an NSF or NIH, in particular those grants, I get a copy of an email from the Office of Research so that I'm telling them what the steps for our internal process are. And then I automatically send them an email back with a couple of sample plans attached, so like the DMP tool that describes what it is and how they can get an individual consultation on it. And a PDF of our boilerplate language that we developed for the PIs who want to use our institutional repository for long-term storage. So with the customization that's available in DMP2, I've gone through the templates and added the pieces of boilerplate language that are appropriate to certain questions for each of the directorates of NSF, so that it's easy for the PIs to find it. They don't have to go to the PDF online to see where the boilerplate language should fit into their plan. We've seen some interesting customizations of our boilerplate language, which looks forward. It's not something to be just dropped in wholesale. They need to make it make sense with their project. But it's worked pretty well. I don't think we're seeing a lot of folks using the DMP tool all the way through. I think they get in and look at the disambiguations of some of the questions, look at our boilerplate language, and then pull it back into their work process. That's fine, as long as they. I think the important thing that we've heard from the PIs is that they have a person to contact if they have questions, and B, something that sort of walks them through the process. So even if they're not using the output as RTF function in the tool, I think the tool is for our PIs is filling a space that we aren't staffed or scaled to provide. So in that way, it's awesome. And we, the fact that we have the support from the Office of Research to build that process flow has been
cool. Reagan, did you have anything you wanted to say? You good? Okay. For those who haven't used it and are here learning about it for the first time, what are we talking about? The things that you're hoping to address, or are there other issues that are new?
policies that people want to assert about their data management and see which of them can be turned into computer actionable rules to verify that you're actually doing what you're playing. So we came up with an initial set of 4 policies relating to retention and ability to data as long as they need to. Policies relating to access control and actually policies related to representation information such as structure, how you use it in schema, and then policies related to persistent effort. So the question is, are there more than those 4 types of policies that really should be enforced?
I don't know the answer to that myself.
Well, policies for integrity.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
That's a squishy one.
Means I run in the data, so if I lose one copy, I have another, and it's got a valid checks.
Right. Anybody else? For people who are new to all of this, what are the main drivers for you? What drew you to come to this workshop? Anything in particular? We can tailor what we talk about if you tell us.
Maybe if I do the demo.
Sure. Yep. Okay. So Tricia is going to do a demo starting here, I think.
Thank you, Andrew. So this is a little, hopefully not entertaining for the wrong reason today. I've never used a Mac for a presentation, and I got a 5-minute little demo, so this could be entertaining for everybody, but not for me. So anyways, I'm really happy that some of you survived the DUG and hung on to talk about data management planning tool. What I want to do today is give you some background on the tool, look at the new website, and think about what researchers can do with that, and then what DMPTool admins can do with that, and then give you some take-homes and Q&A. So first, background. It was a snowy night in Chicago. Andrew and I saw each other across the room. This is true. And we started talking about data management plan. And Sherry was there too. And we thought, boy, you know, there's all of this data management plan requirements. Can't we do something collectively and build some sort of tool to make data management planning easier? And so we started working together in January 2011, but we met in December 2010. And so the UC3 Curation Center at the California Digital Library, UC San Diego Library, DCC, which Andrew mentioned, University of Virginia Library, UIUC, DataONE, and UCLA. We all kind of came together and kind of came up with the requirements and what the tool would look like, and divided up the work. And it was really, hey, I have a barn, okay, I have a computer we can use kind of effort. So, and it was really quite successful. The first tool, the goal of it was really to connect researchers with resources to build quality DMPs. And what Andrew was showing you illustrates the complexity of data management planning. Every agency is saying something different. There's all this help about formats and identifiers and where you should preserve it and what your Office of Research is saying. So it gets really complex. And so what we wanted to do is take all of that information and put it in one place in a little box and make it pretty and make it easy and help researchers create those data management plans. So version 1 was really focused on researchers, and it didn't have any functionality for editors or admins, and you'll get a little better idea what I mean by that. And it was really a CDL kind of view of the project. And so version 2, we thought, well, you know, rather than doing a lot of these processes from scratch, we were having to do a lot of handwork in order to make the tool functional. We applied to the Alpha Peace Loan Foundation and IMLS for funding to create the version 2. of the tool. And so we have a distributed group of partners, and they're listed on the screen. A lot of our original partners are still involved in the tool. And we really wanted to improve the tool for researchers and expand outreach. So now we're going to take a look at the new website, and this is where it's going to get tricky. So the new stuff, we have admin tools, data management guidance, community resources, public DMPs, a partner page, external help, and FAQ. Oh, somebody wants in. Okay. So now this is what the screen looks like. And when I said that there's a lot of complexity to data management planning, this is where we took all of that complexity and put it into the tool. And so the overall look of the tool, we wanted it to be not so CDL or UC3 specific. We wanted this to be a real community resource. So we changed the overall look of the tool. And it's more than just an application. We've added things like we heard from our researchers loud and clear that they wanted public DMPs. They wanted to see examples of DMPs that are out there. And this is really interesting, is we would get this question at least once a week. Is there a place where I can see data management plans? And so we've really had to beg, borrow, and steal to get these people to contribute their data management plans. And it is an option in the tool to make your data management plan public, but nobody is doing that yet. And so we're still trying to make that happen. And so what this is you're seeing here is just the title of the plan, who's the funder, NSF Bio in this case, and then you can download the plan itself. And we also were a little bit hesitant to do this because we don't want people just to go in and start copying data management plans. So we had a really passionate debate about this. And the DMPs that are made public, there's no guarantee that those, were successful. But people still want to see some of them, so I think it's a good idea. We have something called partner institutions. And so we're really hoping to build a big community around the data management planning tool, not just the people who are running the service, et cetera. And so we have this concept of people becoming a partner. And you can become a partner of the data management planning tool one of three ways. First is to establish your institutional authentication using Shibboleth or LDAP, or customize the tool with resources or help text or guidance, or contribute to the maintenance and enhancements of the tool. And then we developed some principles for the partnership and some of the supporting activities. And I won't go too much into detail on these, but it's kind of mom and apple pie about how we all need to work well together and really trying to build that community. How's my navigation going? Okay, not so good here. Oh, wait. So here's the list of partners that we have so far. And our goal is to, I don't want to inspect that. To have a range of partners from various institutions. And so right now we are up to 130 or 140. I don't quite remember what that is. And so it kind of tells how they're partners, whether they're Shibboleth enabled or they've customized the tool. The next thing I want to show you is help. And because there's so many moving parts with help, we really tried to create a way to make it super simple so people can get immediately to what they want to use. So we have something, and this we took this idea from DataONE actually. We're using AskBot, and this is something that builds a FAQ. And so people will pose their questions, and this has been a really helpful tool for us because we don't often get the feedback from users anymore because they can be pretty self-sufficient in using the tool. But this is a way to kind of push a lot of those questions out to the community and help them answer it, help them with their question. So there's, you can see how many, this was a really popular question, 521 views, how my institution isn't a partner institution. And also we can use this as a tool to say, where do we need to do better? If there's a lot of questions about one particular thing, we're probably not delivering the information on our screen. So this has been a very helpful tool for us. Then just kind of a quick start guide. We have somebody on our staff who is always railing against us, saying researchers don't care about that. They just want to create a data management plan and they need to do it in 15 minutes. And that's probably the case, sad but true. And so this is really just for that user who just wants to come in. We'll probably visit the data management planning tool once a year when they do a grant, or twice a year, or however. So this is really for them. Are you guys getting seasick? Whoops, I left help. The other thing that we've added is community resources. And so when we applied for funding from the Sloan Foundation, we really got funding to create the technical infrastructure. But we knew we also wanted to create a lot of help and outreach materials. And so this funding from the IMLS helped us do that. And we pulled together a lot of the really great requirements and help guides that are out there, training materials and LibGuides, etc. And so those are all there for everyone to use. The next thing I want to show you, and this is one thing that I think is great. It's I want to promote the DMP tool, and this is kind of train the trainer type of materials where we have logos and postcards. And these can all be customized. So if you can download this PowerPoint, you can customize it as you wish, or there's posters if you're going to a conference or you have an event at your institution. Talking points, you know, how to prepare when you're going to meet with the head of IT or your vice chancellor for research, or when you're meeting with administrators. And then general purpose slides that you can go ahead and use. And finally, we have these little advertisements that you can embed on your website if you want to just add a little link to that with a code on how to add that to the website. One other thing I want to show you, is the video going to work? All right. Okay. Yep. Oh, it's not going to work. So we created a little video about the DMP tool that we can.
The DMP tool can help researchers create DMPs,
can you hear it?
saving them time and helping them meet funder requirements easily. It's free for anyone to use, and the code is open source.
I'm going to restart it.
That's really cool.
All right, let's see if I can. I'm becoming a power.
Many funding agencies are requiring researchers to submit a data management plan alongside their grant applications. These DMPs are an outline of what the researcher will do with their data, both during the project and afterward. The DMP tool can help researchers create DMPs, saving them time and helping them meet funder requirements easily. It's free for anyone to use, and the code is open source. The DMP tool guides the user through making a plan with a step-by-step wizard that provides help text, resources, and suggested answers. And researchers can co-create plans with colleagues, submit their plans to institutional administrators for review and assistance, and save and print their plans. The DMP tool supports all major funders, and is updated when funders release new requirements. That means you can count on the DMP tool for having the latest information. Institutional administrators can customize the tool for their researchers, providing information on available campus services like data repositories. That means better plans for researchers, since their DMPs will be tailored to the resources at their specific institutions. Data is now being recognized as a valuable research product. Researchers that use the DMP tool to create quality DMPs will have an edge in the grant selection process and will be able to more effectively collect, manage, and share their data. To start using the tool, go to DMPTool.org.
All right. What's that? Oh, yes. Now, how do I get out of here? Oh, magic. Oh. Phew. Okay. So that was the video, and that was a really, if any of you are involved in a project and are thinking about doing some kind of promotional thing, it was a pretty cost-effective resource, and it was very fun to do. And one of the things that we had a challenge of working with the vendor is we kept on wanting the PI or the researcher to be more scruffy, and they just couldn't get that because they kept on giving us people in business suits, and we're like, no, like scruffy sandals and messy hair, and they just couldn't do it. So, so maybe you can try with that. Okay, now I'm going to talk about what researchers can do. And so in the DMP tool, there's really two roles. There's an administrator of the tool, somebody who sets it up, but then there's also a researcher. And a researcher is the end user in this case. So researchers can create plans. They can, oh, Dave's coming up. The researchers can create plans, or if you've already used the data management planning tool to create a plan, you can go back and use that existing tool. And so you can go back and use that existing plan. So if you say, oh, last year I created a really good DMP plan. Oh, look, I broke his machine. And I want to reuse that one. Another thing that we've done in the new DMP tool is allow people to work collaboratively. And we know that people don't work within their own institution. They work across institutions. So you can have this concept of co-owners. And this has been extremely helpful. We've also have, plans can be reviewed. And so let's say your grants office wants to review plans before they're submitted, or, and so I think Spencer gave a case where he could potentially review plans before they're submitted. It can be a soft review or an actual check-off review. And so this is a new feature. We also have the idea of sharing plans just within your institution, or you can share the plans publicly, as I showed on the website, is that if you click the public box, all of those plans will be made publicly available. And so one of the other things is that, so there's 4 things. You can make your plan private, only you can see it, or you can allow, these 5 people to see it, or you can allow your institution to see it, or you can allow the whole world to see it. So just kind of going through what a researcher would see when they're using the data management planning tool. When you log in, you use your local credentials, in this case a Shibboleth login. You select your institution, and if you don't have Shibboleth, LDAP, or you can log in as a guest and then just go ahead and create an account. So it's free and open to anybody. Then the first thing you do is you set up your profile, and you set up how you want to receive notification if there's any feedback or anything like that. Also in the profile, it's not showing up on here, it's down below that. All that stuff is we've added ORCID identifiers, and so you can add your ORCID identifier, and so we're working to have the publicly available DMPs that have an ORCID identifier. Those will be harvested. Your view as a researcher is, this is your dashboard, and it gives you a view of everything that you've done. And this person, this was early on, we hadn't, this person has 0 plans. They co-own 0, and there's nothing to review, so they're a fresh little baby. So this is where you would then create a new DMP plan, and you can use an existing DMP plan, or start a fresh one. So your first step then, if you start fresh, is to select your funder. And we have, I forget, Sherry, how many funders are currently in. You used to know it off the top of your head. All of NSF, all of NIH, a handful of foundations, and also we're starting to add projects that are run across various institutions. So if you are on a project and you can create a data management plan that that anybody can see is publicly available, so those will appear here. You fill out some basic information about your plan, and a title, the solicitation number, and as you see throughout the tool, there's something called tooltips, and these are little things that kind of guide you along, and it tells you then you proposal deadline, so you'll get a notification saying, oh, that proposal's coming up, have you submitted your data management plan, and then if you want to then this is where you can change the visibility of it, etc. Oh. So this is also where you can add the co-owners. So if I wanted to do a data management plan with Andrew, I would add Andrew as a co-owner, and then he would be able to see all this information and change that information as well. And then the 3 visibility settings. So I think this speaks to your question about you know, when you can add text for people. So there's instructions, there's also example text and guidance that you can add here, so this is NSF Atmospheric and Geospatial Sciences. Here's the 4 questions. We're looking at products of research right now. There's instructions and links, and you can answer the question. And then finally, when you're done moving through the various templates and have created a beautiful document, you can export it using as a text file, an RTF, or PDF for submission. So that's really the DMP tool from a researcher's point of view. From an admin point of view, and this is where the majority of the work went into the DMP tool. Because we really wanted to make this so it wasn't simply a static tool, but allow people to customize it for their institution. So if you have a resource at your institution, you would add it either at the on the main pages, or you could add it for a specific template or for a specific question, etc. And so there's different levels of admins, and I'll go through that in a little bit. And so when you set up your, this is just really quickly, when you set up your profile for your institution, you can add your institution name, obviously, along with your local web page information, and that's down in here. The logo for your institution, and then all of that information is going to appear on all of the DMP sites for your institution. So now when you hit Contact Us for your institution, it's going to contact you at your institution, not us at the California Digital Library. And your logos will appear on all of those pages. So you get to field all the questions. So a little bit more on the expanded administrative roles. There's the thing as institutional administrator that assigns all of the various institutional roles. So if there's 5 people in my group, I can assign various roles to them if I'm an institutional administrator. If I'm a template editor, I can create and edit various templates. If I want to create a specific template for my research group, I can go ahead and do that. There's also a resource editor who can add local help text and link to resources, suggest answers, or create example answers for particular questions. And so this is what an institutional profile looks like below. This is UVA. And this is what then the screen would look like for an administrator, where it's customized depending on your role when you log into the tool. You see these various screens. Again, looking at more of the customizations for the University of Virginia. So some of the take-homes for the DMP tool, it's free and open to everybody. And again, we really want this to be a community project. It's an application plus. We have a lot of information on the page that we want the community to contribute to and use and comment on. If you don't like something or there's something better, we want to hear about it. Everybody who was users of the first tool, we did a big migration of the data from the first tool to the new tool. And one of the things that we have heard that people particularly like is that being able to collaborate across institutions and be able to set the visibility of the plans. We really are hoping people become partners in the data management plan. And also, we really want API testers. That's our next area where we want to do some work. And I think Regan's 4 audit questions were perfect for that. So if anybody else wants to be an API tester, we're happy to hear about it. Or if you want to think about different ways that you might use the data management planning tool. So that's it for a brief run through of the data management planning tool. And any questions? Yes, Amber.
I have 2 from
Okay, I'm going to mute something up here.
I have 2 from our participants. The first one is, can a DMPTool be self-hosted or self-administered, or can it only be accessed from the website?
It can be self-hosted and self-administered, and the code is available, but the contents of that, all of the text, everything that person would need to create, all of the text, etc.
Then the second question is, can the DMPTool be translated to other idioms such as Portuguese?
Porque no. I don't know how to say that in Portuguese. Wait, how do you say it in Portuguese? Why not? Oh, yay. Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things we have thought about how we could, we've had a lot of people from Canada and from Europe wanting to use the DMP tool, but it's really, it's based on authentication with Shibboleth and LDAP, and that's usually not used in other countries, but we're happy to set you up with a code and give you the car keys and help you run it. Yeah.
So I was out of the room for almost your entire presentation, but can you talk a little bit about...
Do it again.
But can you talk a little bit about the capabilities that are exposed to the API?
Yeah, right now it's pretty basic, and one of the things with the data management planning tool is we need to protect the privacy of people who are submitting a data management plan. But we're really working for looking for use cases to help us kind of explore where we need to go with that. So right now, it's really looking at just basic dashboard statistics, how many plans have been created, what institutions are they coming from, what are the questions they're answering, et cetera. But we would love to talk to you about what needs you see, because we really want to build that functionality out. You can add any funder you want. It's completely flexible. It's not tied to NSF. It's not tied to the US. You can make up your own templates. They can be whatever you want them to look like. Amber.
Okay, follow-up question to the soft listing. Other instructions.
Yeah, you know, in fact, if they go to the help page on AskBot, off the site, there's a question there of can I run this at my own institution? And there's links to the documentation, et cetera, on that site. Other questions? Yeah.
It is pretty nice that efforts are being made, that combination it's pretty good. But note, however, that also the DMPs are living documents. They do change in time. So
Right.
are you, in manner of speaking, do they have some sort of a revision control?
So versioning. You know, that's one thing that is DMP3, DMPTool 3 is versioning, but you can, there's like some little squeaky get-arounds now that you can copy a plan and then name it, give it a name that's, you know, different version, but we don't version directly or natively, but it's something that, you know, that's a great question that we should put something up in our help text about how you might create versions within the tool. You can do it, but it's a little kludgy. I think there's a more elegant way to do it. But other questions?
Something like C, right? We can think about being a template up there that would say, if you're using us, we have answers for you. But that seems to be a little bit orthogonal to the sort of going from the university down. So, do you have how to do that, or is there a way to merge, like it's University of X plus C technology, and you'd be able to see both?
Right. You should be able to do that. So here's how do I create a DMP template for multi-institution group project? And it's kind of combining both of those things. So, and for us, we would love to work with you to figure out how to do this, to make sure that we understand all of your needs. But we think that there's basically you create a publicly available template with your requirements in it, and then anybody can use it and see it. It's the trick with Shibboleth because it's based at an institution. Yeah. So, other questions? Yeah. Right. I think we hit the 10. No. Sherry, do you remember? I think we have 9,000 users. And I think about the same number of plans. But a lot of the plans are test plans. And when we migrated the data over, we tried to get researchers to clean out their garage and get rid of their test plans, but they didn't. So I think you have to take those numbers with a little bit of a grain of salt. But we have a lot of users and a lot of return users, and that's more what we're looking at is not just people who come in once and create a test plan, but do they come back a second time? And to us, that's a much more meaningful metric. Spencer, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to comment that we're really interested in some of the reporting capabilities, the API, partially just to keep justifying our engagement in it. Right now, as you can see, the supporting research data management is an unfunded mandate, and we need to be able to say how many people are using the tool and what they're using it for in order to justify our continued engagement with it. So, helping write use cases or test the API help reach that goal.
Okay. I'll second that. Yeah, Mike.
So I've asked this before, Andrew. Have you guys still thought about tracking the success of the grant feedback? that back in.
Right.
We actually tried to talk to our office of research about doing that, and they said I would need to write Freedom of Information Act requests for every grant that I wanted to see the results of, because they're that protective of what the grants are. So when I said I would do this, so, but other people's office of research might be less obstructionists.
Well, I think grants are touchy things. You know, people are very protective over their funding if they're successful or if they're not successful. So we have talked a lot about this, about how taking the DMP tool to the next step of kind of tracking that whole life cycle of research. Okay, your grant's successful. You're putting your data into this repository. You're getting your identifiers from here. So it's something that Andrew and I and the rest of the team have talked about quite a bit. And, you know, another infusion of cash. That's, I think we'd love to do that. Okay. I think we've had a question from almost everybody in the room. Well, there's a few.
We have a break that's supposed to come up in 10, 15 minutes or so. And then what we were planning afterwards was hands-on time. So hands-on time using the DMP tool to create plans or to look at the institutional configuration, depending on what you're interested in. We can split into 2 groups and do that. We can do it as 1 group. It all depended entirely upon who was in the room and what everybody's interested in. So are people interested in that generally in the first place?
People are cooked. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. And if you have more questions, you know where we live and you know how to get in touch with us. And you know, if you have additional questions that are really deep in the weeds, I'm happy to hear those and bring the team in to listen to and talk with you about those. Thank you.